Welcome to the Know It Some podcast, bringing you the widest variety of conversational interviews for a well-rounded perspective on life. Because while it's true nobody likes a know-it-all, it's also good to know it some. Here's your host, Steve Platt.
That's right. Welcome to the Know It Some podcast. I'm your host, Steve Platt. And before I introduce this week's guest, I have a few important announcements to make. First, it's an incredible honor to announce that the Know It Some podcast has been nominated for the 2021 Podcast Awards in both the People's Choice category as well as Best Society and Culture Podcast. I'm really humbled by the amount of love and support for the show, and on behalf of myself and the entire Roll Up Network, thank you so much for every follow, ranking, review, and retweet. Voting ends on July 31st, so please head on over to podcastawards.com and cast your vote for the Know It Some podcast in both the People's Choice and Society and Culture categories. And while we're at it, I'd also love for you to give us a ranking and review on Podchaser. Podchaser really is the future of podcast reviews. It's not just for Apple users. Whether you're Team Apple, Team Android, does not matter. Head on over to Podchaser and leave us a ranking and review. And of course, we would always love a 5-star ranking on Apple or iTunes as well. All right, major congratulations are in store for past guest Eddie Alvarez on being selected to lead Team USA as the flag bearer during the opening ceremonies last week. We're extremely proud of you here on the show, and we will be cheering you and the rest of Team USA on as you open competition against Israel on Friday. I know we had said that they faced South Korea first. We had that wrong, and our apologies there. They faced South Korea the next day on Saturday, so check them out. I can tell you that Eddie will be rocking custom cleats made and designed by another previous guest, Marcus Rivero, who has made custom designs for many of this year's Olympic athletes. So congratulations to Marcus as well on that honor. I've seen some of the designs already on Marcus's Instagram, and they are absolutely incredible. What he's doing for these Olympians there in Tokyo is amazing. Marcus is one of my favorite Instagram follows at Souls by Sir. You can see what he's got going on over there. Okay, this week's guest is a man of many talents, and I don't say that lightly. He's an accomplished actor, director, writer, musician. He's been on shows that you love like Bloodline and Burn Notice, and I'll tell you, Burn Notice is one of my favorite shows of all time, and he plays Barry the money launderer on that show. He's in a bunch of episodes to include the pilot and the finale. Just an incredible job. He crushes that role. He has a true passion and love for the fine arts, and that comes through again and again in what just might be my favorite interview on the show so far. I had a lot of fun talking with Paul, and I'd be shocked if he isn't your favorite Know It Some guest by the time the episode is over. We didn't even have a formal opening at first. It was just a cold open. We were talking, having a blast, and then I was like, welcome to the Know It Some pod. So our first cold open, we're just going to roll right into the conversation. It's our longest episode yet. It's going to leave you wishing that it never ended. Please welcome to the show, Paul Tay.
I mean, you never know who you meet along the way. So anytime I meet people, I try to get to know, I try to ask them their name or, what's they're about, because, as somebody who got into this because I was a fan, it was meeting celebrities or meeting artists growing up as a kid and them taking the time, to say hi. Or I remember when I was in the 8th grade, I was really into the Go-Go's.
Yeah.
And I snuck into the sound check at Sunrise Musical Theater. And I had brought flowers for the drummer, Gina Shock, because she had recently had open heart surgery. And she was like, I'm a little kid. I was 13 years old. And she was so blown away. And she gave me her drumsticks, and she introduced me to Charlotte and Belinda and Jane, the whole fucking band. And
Wow.
Michael Hutchins from INXS, they were the opening act. And I shook his hand, took a picture with him, and sat next to him during their sound check, checking out the Go-Go's. And, I shouldn't have been there. They could have easily said, get the fuck out of here. The security could have come in. Today, it would never happen. But, it did. And it left such an impression on me that, when I was in LA and I remember one time I was walking down the street and some little kid ran up to me. He recognized me from this Disney show I was on. And, you know, you just take the time. One time I was at an LA Galaxy match and we were hammered in the parking lot. And this little boy's pulling on my shirt. And, you know, I can see that they're like, "Are you Sweaty Eddie?" And their dad was with them. And I like passed my beer to my friend and, you know, quickly sobered up. And I was like, "Yeah, what's up?" And they're like, "Oh my God, oh my God." And they're like jumping up and down.
That's so awesome.
So I just start jumping up and down with them. And, you know, I'm a nobody. So it's like, if you know who I am and you want to say hi, that sounds like a, you know.
Yeah. I mean, you're really not a nobody. And that's the thing, you know, you've done so much.
Well, I'm a somebody, but I'm not, you know,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. I'm not,
Yeah.
you know, it's like,
yeah, it's not like you know, Oprah or anything, right? Like where you're like crazy recognizable, and I think that's probably a blessing because you're able to kind of live your life and go about your life without, you know what I mean?
sure.
Without, because I think at a certain level, it can probably get annoying.
Yeah, well, and now in this day and age, I mean, like, you know, my students have no idea what I've done. You know, like,
wow,
they because they live in the moment.
right?
You know, they don't know who Bruce Willis is.
Jeez.
I showed them Pulp Fiction and I said, "Okay, do you guys know who Bruce Willis is?" And they just watched it. And they're like, "No." I'm like, "You just watched him." They're like, "Oh," because they don't have any context for him. They don't know Die Hard. They don't know the Demi Moore situation. You know, like, they don't know it.
But I think I think you're right though, that's a function of people right now just living in the moment, because that wasn't the case for you and I. You and I kind of knew the people that had come before us, even if they were not from our time. Like, I don't know about you, but like I've watched the Dick Van Dyke Show like every episode. I've seen,
Well, yeah,
Laurel and Hardy. You know,
absolutely, because I mean, when I was growing up, nostalgia was invented.
yeah,
Like, nostalgia didn't really happen until 1971, and there's a Life magazine article, as a matter of fact, that like kind of rings it in. I actually have it. It's I've picked it up one time in a thrift store, and it's like, you know, nostalgia, all the rage. And in the 70s, the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s were all on the small screen, the big screen, music. And I was very, very confused because I'd be watching, you know, Happy Days.
mm-hmm.
And I'm like, "Is this the 70s?" And my dad's like, "No, it's supposed to be the 50s. And I'm like, "But why do they have long sideburns? Did they have long sideburns in the 50s?" He's like, "No." He's like,
inaccurate.
He's explaining to me, you know, period pieces, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm confused by what the fuck is Shana Na. Like, they're in the 70s, but they're still on 50s music. And you know, so like, I'm born into this thing where I have to separate,
mm-hmm.
you know, what is what. Like, why is Harry Nelson singing all these old songs from the 20s? Did he record them in the 20s? My dad's like, no. You know, so now these kids, they don't have nostalgia because they're brainwashed by corporate America. They don't know tacos. They know Chipotle. They don't know Spider-Man or superheroes. They go Marvel versus DC.
Yeah.
Corporate talk, you know?
It really, really is. And it's sad. And, you know, when it comes to going back, because now think about it, with everybody streaming their television now, right? They
Right.
kind of, it's not the same as network TV was and all that. They have the ability, if they wanted to go back and watch, because I've done it. I go back and watch all of Cheers. I'll watch Taxi. I'll watch,
Right.
you know, stuff that came before.
Oh,
but
yeah.
They don't do that, because when I talk to them and I talk to them about quote unquote watching older shows, this generation will say, "Oh yeah, we watch like Friends and The Office," and I'm like, that, you know what I mean? Like, that's your idea.
That's about as far back as they can go. They can't go back further than the 90s, and their tastes are very, very limited. They don't like things that are nonlinear. They don't like things that are talky. They want action, 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 action. They're obsessed with Fast and the Furious.
Yeah, Michael Bay over Aaron Sorkin, I think, is the taste that they have.
You know, and the other thing too is that we had to know everything that came before, because we were still part of a time where kids were seen and not heard. Like, my parents didn't take me to see movies I wanted to see. Are you kidding me? I went to go see what movies they wanted to see. I went to the restaurants they went to. And if there was something on the menu I could eat, I was lucky. Nowadays, people just cater to their kids. So, you know, there is no more, you know, adult themed, because the adults never grew up. The people in my generation who had kids are all big babies.
Yeah, it's kind of true.
I see them on Facebook. I see them on Instagram. They're nice people, but all they want to do is go to Disney World and Walmart and Chipotle. And it's like, you're all brainwashed. You don't have any opinions. And then they're also happy when Bohemian Rhapsody came out, because they're like, oh, finally my kids get my music. And I'm like, first of all, it's not really your music. It's not even my music. We inherited Queen. They're the generation really before us. They're not really a Gen Xer band. I mean, okay, Flash, I loved it, right? And people laugh at me when I tell them that's my favorite Queen record, but like, that's when I know Queen.
Right.
You know, when I was 9 or 10 or whatever I was when that came out.
Yeah.
But it's
even their retro tastes are not real. I mean, it's more like whatever the mainstream thinks is popular of the retro stuff. It's you know, whatever's in fashion now, and they think it's, you know, oh, you know, this is my past. It's not really your past at all.
No. Millennials are really bad like that. Millennials think everything's theirs.
Oh yeah, no, I know, and I'm guilty of it too sometimes. You know, truthfully, because a lot of the stuff that I like comes from before me. I'm a huge Tom Petty fan, and Tom Petty's not underground at all. He's very much mainstream, but because he was mainstream, it was available to me, presented to me, I guess, in such a way that I was able to fall in love with it. And then I went back and through his whole anthology and the whole deal. But
he crosses over, though. You know, he's part of a time when pop music or pop rock or mainstream rock was not an ugly term. Like, you know, the last great pop music for me would have to be like Madonna and Hall & Oates.
Yeah.
Like, you know, Hall & Oates, man, those guys were top 10, top 20, top 40. Amazing songwriters.
Yeah.
We don't have pop music like that anymore.
Well, we don't have songwriters hardly anymore.
Well, that's true.
You know?
I mean, there's some, like, I gave Lana Del Rey a really hard time when she first came out, because she went to Fordham and she just seemed like a well-groomed it girl. But she's a really good songwriter. She's got some deep shit.
Yeah.
I'm super impressed. You know, I try not to be a hater, because I read music magazines every month. Like, I try to be as up and up on music, because I feel like right now, of my favorite forms of art, music is the only one that's still really moving forward. Where, because like I had a conversation last night with this 15-year-old son of like my best friends, two of my best friends, and you know, he was showing me his record collection, and it's great, dude. He's got Radiohead in there with like Electric Ladyland and, you know, Aphex Twins, and he's got like this instrumental stuff, and it's really eclectic. And I can talk to him, and I was like, oh, Jack Cassidy played bass with on one of the live tracks in Electric Ladyland. He's like, yeah, I love that song. I was like, yeah, well, he's in Hot Tuna. I saw him. He's like, oh, Hot Tuna. I said, right, they were spin off of Jefferson Airplane. He's like, oh, I know them. And, you know, so like, I feel like if you get,
I feel like your friends did a good job with him.
Yeah, right. But like, if you get young people who like music, they aren't afraid to go back. They aren't afraid to genre hop and bust out, you know, some country they like, you know, or some metal. And, you know, then I tell them what I like, and they're like, oh, that's cool. So you can have that conversation. Television and film right now, which was the way we communicated with our elders, right?
Yeah.
Like if you said to your uncle or grandpa, oh, I saw Casablanca, they'd be like, oh, now you're talking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So in
Yeah.
order to have conversations with our elders, we had to learn their culture. And their culture for us growing up was sports, TV, music, and film, period.
Yeah.
You know?
But if you try to have that conversation now with the generations that come after us, and you try to bring up, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf or whatever, they're not going to know what you're talking about. You bring up,
no.
like none of it. Which is, it's sad, but by the same token, I mean, I don't think that all hope is lost. This could just be perhaps a phase. I'll hold out hope to a certain extent, but it's certainly, like you said, with how corporate everything has gotten, it's discouraging. I think the only silver lining to that dark cloud is there are things now where people are able to get their influences and their music and everything from other sources. Other people that have social media accounts or podcast accounts or TikToks or whatever that are not necessarily being funded by or aligned with sponsors on television and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
So that'll be kind of cold open and welcome you in a little in the middle here and just say, welcome to the Know It Some podcast. And I really appreciate you being on here. It means a lot to me, Paul.
Oh, Steve, my pleasure, man. Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We talked a little bit just now about your love for music, but you've done a lot of work in the realm of acting and in theater, both in the theater and on television and in movies, and I think you even did some animated stuff. So you've kind of done a little bit of it all. What got you interested in the performing arts in general?
That's a good question. I guess being an only child, and I really only got to see my cousins in the summertime. So before I started playing like any kind of organized sports, I spent a lot of time alone and with my parents. So in my bedroom, I would listen to my records, and I would take my plastic baseball helmets, for before you could buy like baseball hats like you can now, like at Lids and stuff.
Right.
They didn't have anything like that. You couldn't get like authentic stuff like that. But they had these like plastic baseball helmets that they would sell at games and stuff like that. I don't know why we would want them, but we would wear them, and they were stupid, because they had like a piece of plastic inside. It's like almost like a hard hat. But it's not, and you couldn't wear it in a game. It's not game regulated. So
no.
they just caught a lot of dust. Well, what I did was I turned them into a drum set.
Oh.
And, I would take sticks from the pennants that I would get, and I would turn those into my drumsticks until they would break. And I would put on, Physical Graffiti, In the Light, and I would play along to Bonham's drums. Or I'd put on, Ozzy Osbourne when he had that live double album, Speak of the Devil, and I would try to, emulate Symptoms of the Universe, And so then when I was into the Beatles, it was taking a tennis racket and putting shoestrings on to make a guitar strap and playing my tennis racket like I was George Harrison or something,
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And then I would start to kind of the precursor for, I guess you could say, like air band lip sync, when John Lennon's John and Yoko released Double Fantasy in 80. He hadn't had an album out in 5 years, so it was a really, really, really big thing. And I got the album when it came out in October, and I remember doing a lip sync thing for Just Like Starting Over to my mom and dad, and they were like, "Yay!" And then he got murdered, and then everything became introspective, and I started drawing, and I started doodling, and I started writing and poetry and stuff, and so I guess really in the fifth and sixth grade was where that whole love of music, performance, drawing, and then like MTV came out, and I mean, my God, I just sat there and watched it until I had to go to bed. It was like the best thing I'd seen since, like, Speed Racer. I liked Speed Racer. I liked HR Puffin stuff, which was a little bit before my time. And those are the same people who, Sid and Marty Krofft, who created all the McDonald's characters and the Banana Splits. So all that like live animation and comedy, Scooby-Doo and soundtracks, and like this whole vibe of like pranksters and goofiness, and like the Honeymooners, and Kiss and Kabuki. All that stuff was very theatrical to me. The Phantom, Kiss meets the Phantom of the Park. And so, and I was a big Halloween kid. That was like huge. But this was when people were putting razor blades in the candy apples and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
fun times for kids everywhere.
Yeah, but it was like the old school, like, your parents didn't take you. You just went with your friend and walked down the street.
Yeah. Yeah, basically beg strangers for candy is which I guess is frowned upon now. If basically it's don't talk to strangers and don't take candy, but back then it was go knock on doors in the dark and beg strangers for candy.
And so, when you get to somebody's house and they had done it up and they had like spooky records and they jump out at you, man, I couldn't get enough of that cheap thrills. And
oh yeah,
like I said, I spent a lot of time alone, so I had like Fisher Price toys and Star Wars toys, and in the backyard I would just create these like scenarios, like these like long drawn out storylines that I would create. And then, eventually like these people would, negotiate with these people. And then, the Fisher Price guys flying in the Millennial Falcon, and, Greedo's in a Fisher Price truck beating up G.I. Joe. It was like I was already creating and writing, and I was writing short stories as a kid. I was writing all these stories about rabbits, like new versions of Peter Cottontail. I was obsessed with rabbits. I'm like obsessed.
Huh. Like Donnie Darko?
Yeah,
Yeah,
pretty much. Like when I saw that film, I was like, oh wow. Yeah.
Let me ask you. So that sparked the love and the passion for it. When did you decide, okay, I want to pursue this as a career, and I think I can make this happen?
Well, the first thing was music. So I got a drum set when I was like 12. Really had a hard time trying to get my feet and hands to do completely different things.
Yeah.
Got really frustrated, but that's where I learned to love the Go-Go's and like Bow Wow Wow and a lot of that more tribal Stray Cats, where I was like, oh, you don't need a whole drum set. You just, bang on the snare drum and play the toms. And so that kind of took me to more of like playing the bongos and the conga. And then I wanted to play guitar. And so I played in the jazz band in high school at Chaminade. And I wasn't very good. Like I couldn't solo, I couldn't play leads, but I knew my chords really, really well.
Gotcha.
And because, I like the Who and power punk and all that shit. So I was just playing that stuff anyway.
Rhythm guitar, yeah.
Yeah, but then like by my junior year, I was at Cooper City, and this kid comes up to me and he says, "Hey man, are you in a band?" I was like, "No." He's like, "Oh." I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Oh, we're looking for a bass player." I was like, "Oh, I can play bass." I didn't have a bass. And he's like, "Great, can you come to this house on such and such?" I was like, "Yeah." So I like went to this thrift, like a pawn shop, and I got some $25 no name knockoff, Fender Precision bass. And I went to their house and I was like, okay, it's 4 strings instead of 6, and the top 4 are the same. So it's even easier. If you're a rhythm guitar player, it's like bass. Oh my God. It's like you actually are more talented. So I was in that band, the Invalids, and then the Invalids.
Oh, I love that name.
Yeah, it was good. And then they broke up, and the main guy in that band went on to have a really nice career in some other band. I can't remember now.
Gotcha.
Anyway, me and his brother started our own band called Sirhan, and we were
That's
we
awesome.
were well, we wanted to offend our parents' generation, right?
Yeah,
Because
as
they all
much as
loved,
possible.
yeah, because they all loved the Kennedys.
Yeah.
And we kind of were goofing on Duran, so we made our S's like all big, like the D's,
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and so that took me. I had that band for like 2 years. We just played school gigs and like parties, house parties. We was fun. We had a lot of original songs that I was writing. I was writing mostly all the lyrics, and then I'd write these riffs, and then I'd take the riffs to the guitar player Scott, and he would turn them into songs. And so that was really the beginning, I guess you could say, of where all that creativity was going. And I designed the logo and all that shit, right? And that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to do theater. I think I saw one play in high school that one of my friends was in, and I was like, you guys are nerds. I don't like nerds. I don't hang out with nerds. I don't know these dorks.
You're more of the punk, the punk rock kind of a feel.
That and soccer. You know what I mean? Because I played soccer pretty much from like fourth grade on.
Yeah.
I played in my high school teams, and I played on a city league team, a travel team. So yeah, I was either playing soccer or listening to music or playing music or going to see bands. And then I got into Barry University, and this woman came up to me and she wanted to take my picture. She's like, "You're really interesting looking." I had like spiky blonde hair.
You're like, "Thank you?"
Yeah. And so she started taking my picture a lot. And, I was like modeling, I guess. And she's like, "My sister is in a play." I was like, "Oh, God." She's like, do you want to come with me? I was like, "Okay, sure." And we went to go see her sister in a play at Barry. And it was Night Mother by Marcia Norman. And they had a professional actress in it, Harriet Ozer, who I've gotten to work with, which is like crazy amazing. And it was so good. Like, it was so not the crap I saw in high school. It was like really professional set, the lighting, the costumes, the performances. And it was that kitchen sink drama.
Mm-hmm.
And it just lit a fire under me. It just boom. My band was breaking up. I was a 5'10" goalkeeper. You know what I mean? We didn't have MLS yet.
Right.
North American Soccer League was bust.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, maybe this is the world I need to be in. We went to the party afterwards, and I met all these eclectic people, and it just seemed like a perfect segue from a kind of busted music career that wasn't going to go anywhere, I don't think, because I don't know. I don't know. I know maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I could have done something with it, but I just got the bug for it, and I auditioned for the first show that I could, which was a musical called Carnival. And I was really into it because it had puppets. You know what I mean? And the woman who ran the theater program at Barry, Patricia Manaw, was like this famous puppeteer.
No kidding.
I was like, holy shit, this is my way in, man. I'm down. So, man, once we got in there and I started working with foam and hot glue guns and, paper mache, it was like, I was never a Boy Scout. I never went to camps. I never did any kind of arts and crafts, creative stuff like that. It was always more, plug in and play or sports. So this was now a whole new way, building sets, changing lights, figuring out how to rewire lighting equipment. Like this cable goes to this and this wire. And I was totally into it. Like I hated school, except now that I had a purpose and I was learning all these new skills. it really wasn't about the acting so much at first. It was really more about like being in a world where you could create. Like you could just take these words on a piece of page, and then this person's gonna go, if we build a set that looks like yada yada, and the lighting person's like, yeah, and blah, 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 and the costumes, and I was like, oh my God, you're creating worlds. And I had always loved movies growing up, but to me, at that time period, at 1989, I was like, you can't make movies. Only rich people make movies.
Yeah.
Well, it just didn't seem accessible.
It is different though, theater versus television and film in so many ways. The linear progression of acting out and putting together everything, I think is definitely special. And then I think the audience feedback and response is also special. Having a live audience there. So I don't know. I think what you were able to do in getting involved in theater, and like you said, creating worlds, that opened up an outlet for you that you hadn't had before. I mean, you had all that creativity in you, and I don't think that you necessarily, from what you're telling me, had the ability to do that up until that point.
Yeah, it just didn't have teachers that. I mean, I had really good teachers at Chaminade, but one of them I still talk to regularly, man. This guy, Mr. Wanyu, and he's still teaching, and he just sent me a CD that he made like 2 or 3 months ago. Beautiful. I mean, the man is a beautiful human being, and he's a great singer, guitar player, songwriter, and he's still doing his thing. And he was a big inspiration, So I had great teachers at Chaminade. It's just that in theater was not, no one in my family was an actor. No one in my family did theater. People played music in my family. My dad was a singer. He was an amazing singer. His dad played the trumpet. My grandfather on the other side played the violin. My grandmother played the piano. So, we did music. My dad played college basketball. My mom played high school basketball. So music and sports, that was our thing. And movies. I mean, nobody went to the theater in South Florida. No, they still don't go to the theater.
No, they still don't.
Right.
Yeah. Well, so about that. So Mad Cat Theater Company, almost 20 years, or what, about 18 years or so.
Well, we're still going. I just took a break because I burnt out.
COVID. Well, yeah. Well,
no. We had transitioned. The last physical stage piece that we did was in 2018.
Okay.
But then we made a full-length movie. It took about a year to get it out. We did 2 festivals, and then we tweaked it, and now we're waiting because of COVID to put it out. And then we've done some short music videos and stuff like that. But I mean, we're still around. I just had to stop doing theater because of a lot of reasons.
Gotcha.
But I just didn't feel, it's just after 18 years, after 19, now we're what, 20, 21, we're in our 21st year of existence.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I need to do anything right now. I don't want to write another grant. I don't want to beg people for money. I don't want to beg people to come see my work. People got sick of me. I feel like this town hates my guts because, you can get sick of people. It's like REM. It's like Radiohead. Yeah, they're still good, but I'm sick of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want to hear you two anymore. I stop, because it's too much. We've OD'd on it.
Yeah. What made you start the theater company in the first place? I mean, was it a desire to kind of get your work out there, or?
It was a bunch of things.
Did you know a good group of people before you went into it?
Oh yeah, I was really lucky. When I was in undergrad at Barry, We got this new kid that came in my junior year named Chaz Mena, who's, very successful actor down here and in New York as well. And Chaz was like a total new type of energy. He'd come from UM. He was a couple years older than me. He'd already been on Miami Vice, and he was just different. Had a different energy. He was like, somebody who really took it seriously. You know what I mean? Took himself seriously too. And so he said to me, "Hey, I'm playing Austin in this production of True West by Sam Shepard." And I was like, "Oh my God, I've read him. He's amazing." He's like, "Yeah, well, we're doing this play, this brand new theater company. You should come down and check it out." And I went down to Lincoln Road and I checked out this space, and they were doing a play by Joe Orton called Funeral Games. And I knew who Joe Orton was because I had seen the movie Prick Up Your Ears with Gary Oldman.
Yeah.
Who's like my favorite actor and like favorite of all time. And so like I didn't know who Joe Orton was. I knew that I was going to go see the next Gary Oldman movie, and he's playing this guy Joe Orton. So I got obsessed with Joe Orton, and this guy is now doing a Joe Orton play, and then Sam Shepard. And so I meet this guy John Rodez, and we hit it off like that. And I auditioned for him for True West, and he's like, you're way too young to play this part. He's like, "But I really like you, and I want to work with you." And I was 20 years old, and he gave me my first professional acting gig. And I mean, like, that was it. I was hooked. I shaved my hairline. I would like not shower for days. Like I totally was like all super method about it because, I was reading Uta Hagen and Marlon Brando and, all those guys, all those old school, Stella Adler actors. Those were my heroes.
Right. Well, and they're good heroes to have. I mean, those are names that that I would hope live on forever. So they're good heroes to have.
Clifford Odets, I read all that stuff, the Fervent Years, all of his plays, all that like hardcore, post World War II Americana kitchen sink stuff. And that was really back in the late 80s and early 90s when I was getting into theater. These 2-person, 3-person, 4-person dramas, slugfest, I mean, just the kernel of what it's why, if you want to be an actor, that's the kind of stuff you want to do, where you're building a character over 9 scenes and intermission. I mean, and so I was working at Area Stage, driving to South Beach where I had been already hanging out, going to see all these concerts because that's where all the punk and alternative bands in the 80s played was Miami Beach.
Right.
So I was already there anyway, and now I'm doing theater professionally, and I'm in school and doing puppetry and building puppets, and like I wrote my own puppet show, and I mean
that's really, really cool.
It was
some Jim Henson stuff.
Once I started working at Area Stage, John, and then soon his wife Maria Rodaz, like they just took me in, and for the next 10 years, while I was in college, when I went to grad school, when I came back from grad school, I worked off and on for Area Stage for 10 years. I was like the Denny Lane to their Paul and Linda McCartney. Do you know what I mean? Like, seriously, I had the keys to the theater. When they had their first child, like they were like, "You're running the show." And I was a college kid, and they let me design, they let me direct, they let me stage manage. So all the things that I was learning from my teachers at Barry, John and Maria were saying, "You can do that stuff here." And so it was like I had 2 educations going at the same time. And that nurturing for me as an only child who didn't really have a lot of friends growing up and really kind of was awkward at times socially was what I wanted, because it was what I had in the band. It's what I had playing soccer. You know what I mean? Like this group of people who were your friends, they had your back. So for me, once I decided that I wanted to go to grad school and get my master's in directing, I always from that point on was like, I'm going to have a theater company.
That's so cool.
So that really was what it was all about. And then, I joined some other companies when I got out of grad school. I came back, was still working with Area, worked with a couple other groups, but I had an opportunity in 2000 to start my own and get off the ground with Miami Light Project, where they were like, come on in, you don't have to pay rent for the first, year. And I was like, what? So, I started writing these plays. I had my girlfriend at the time who was an actress and a writer as well. I was like, help me write these plays. She's like, what do you mean help you? I was like, I have no confidence. I have no courage. Like, I know what I want to say, but like, help me. So we like co-wrote these 3 plays the first year, and bam, we're like New Times, best of, blah, blah, blah. Everybody's coming to see us, sold out shows. And I was like, so, that's what it really was, which eventually then takes us to.
So area was really kind of the inspiration in a way, because you felt that kind of family and it was something that you loved, and you just kind of wanted to maybe not just recreate it, but make one that's yours.
Well, they stopped for a while. I mean, they've been going strong now, but they took a little bit of a hiatus themselves after 10 years. And so when they made that break, I was like, well, now's the time for us to sort of be like a spin-off group.
That's awesome.
Because that's how I always think of things in like musical terms. I was like, we're not going to be Area Stage, but it's like almost like we were the mothers and like he's like Zappa, you know what I mean? And so like,
yeah,
we're going to now be the mothers without Zappa. And so I a lot of the kids, there's kids, listen to me, God, a lot of that, well, we were kids. We were in our 20s that came with me were cats that I knew that we had worked together at Area Stage or at Gable Stage, where I just worked.
That's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Yeah, I honestly never really realized that, the whole, I don't know, like where the genesis of this kind of stuff comes from, but you're kind of right. Like it is kind of like musical in terms of spin-offs. Like one thing spawns another.
Yeah, exactly. And so
cool.
It inspired us to go do our own thing where, like John was doing a lot more of Area Stage was doing a lot more of like other people's work and, occasionally doing original. We were like, we're going to do almost only original and then occasionally do a previously published work. You know what I mean? That's how we wanted to separate ourselves because we didn't want to be just like them or anybody else. And I was looking around going, well, nobody does comedies in this town. Everybody does like serious shit. And I was like, I'm not here to compete with anybody. I don't care. I don't want to be like any of these other theater companies at all. I don't want to have a season subscription. I don't want to do credit cards. I don't give a shit about the Carbonells. I don't care about any of that stuff because all that stuff is just it just complicated. It just complicates things.
Where'd the name come from?
Mad Cat? Same thing like what I was saying earlier about like being a band. I wanted to sound more like a band than a theater company. Like Cheap Trick.
Yeah. No, I like it.
Well, I mean, one of the other names I thought of was Funky Monkey.
That's pretty cool.
But everyone's like, no, that's just you sound like an ice cream flavor. And,
well, now they have a beer, Funky Buddha. So it's kind of.
Yeah, and funky. Yeah, and funky was a cool word in 2000.
Yeah,
but I think Mad Cat works best because, it sometimes we're angry and sometimes we're just crazy.
I like it. I like it a lot. Now, a lot of people know you from Burn Notice, right? And I'll admit, I know it's kind of annoying to constantly hit on that show, but I'll admit that's kind of where I don't want to say first recognized you from because I had seen you in a commercial that you had done for Pringles way back in the day, but like when I was in the Marine Corps, and this was before Netflix started putting out their own content, they were still shipping DVDs to people and stuff. Yeah. You really only had like network television and a handful of cable channels, and so I'm just kind of like flipping through trying to find something to watch. And here was this TV show that, for me, was like a little cheesy and corny and maybe a little campy, but in like a little playful and a little, I don't know if campy is the right word, but
No. I always describe Burn Notice as Scooby-Doo meets MacGyver.
yes, and I enjoyed it. Like, I recognize that it was still, some mainstream stuff, and still a show, but I enjoyed it compared to what was on network television, and I couldn't get enough of it. And
It saved cable.
yeah, it was phenomenal. I loved the show. And you were a reoccurring character in so many episodes, to include the pilot and finale. I mean, you're on screen on both. And so I just wanted to ask you a little bit about that show, if I could.
Yeah. Burn Notice is another great part of that, because when I got the call from Matt Nix that the show was going to be, a go, he was so excited. He's like, I want to make you a recurring character, because Barry was not originally thought of, as far as I know, okay, as being a recurring character. But I met Matt at the pilot shoot, and he was really cool, like really hungry, really into it. And I'd done 5 pilots in Miami that were all busts. And so this was like the first one I read that I was like, you know what, this has got something. Yeah. And I told him that. I was like, are you from Miami? He's like, no. I said, well, you've done a really good job capturing things that certain people prior have not. And so he knew that I know Miami. And so I said to him, I said, in this first scene, if I throw in a little Spanish at the end or something like that, is that cool? He's like, yeah. You speak Spanish? I was like, well, listen, if you're going to live in Miami, you're going to have to learn some Spanish, because people here, they don't say caliocho. They say cayocho, and everybody knows how to pronounce it. And if you don't, you look stupid. Like, it's not LA where everybody's, bastardizes all the Spanish. Like,
right.
It should be Los Feliz, and everyone calls it Los Feliz. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? This is a Mexican city. You were founded by Padre Pio.
My first time, like, in the San Francisco area, I was staying in Tiburon, and but I was calling it Tiburon, and the locals there in the Bay Area were like, "Wait, you're staying where?"
Yeah, they're so gringo. It's like, come on, man. And they're like, "Are you Hispanic?" I'm like, "No, but I live in Miami. I'm, come on.
Yeah,
you got to be able to order your own food in Spanish."
For sure. So you had a feeling about the show that it was going to get picked up, or at least that it was different than the previous pilots you had filmed.
Yeah. And so, on the set that day, I mean, we did our thing, and Matt was really excited. And so the show was to go, and he's like, I think we're going to bring you back a lot because you're local, and, you know a lot of people. I gave him a list of names, of numbers, of actors, and like personalities, because he wanted people that were authentic.
That's pretty
cool.
Course,
which then, of course, that got me in trouble with the casting director. She wasn't too happy about that. And I was like, I don't know. I said, look, if the creator of a show asked me to jump, I'm going to say how high. Okay.
Yeah.
He asked me for some names. What do you want from me?
Did they ever pull from that list or no?
I have no idea, but apparently the list at least got to her, because she was like, you don't think I don't know who actors are? I was like, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wasn't thinking about it from your perspective,
That's so funny.
But once the show got picked up, I remember hanging out with the wardrobe people and the designer. And I remember saying, well, what's everybody wearing? Because they were talking about, what are we going to make Barry look like? And I said, show me what everybody's wearing. They showed me what, they had for Michael. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And they showed me what, Bruce's character was going to play. And I was like, okay, so we got to go away from that entirely. So what I didn't see was the metrosexual Miami guy.
Yeah.
The guy who's wearing clothes that are fashionable, regardless of whether they look good on him or whether they fit. Because that to me was what was going on. And I also said, I want to make him sexually ambiguous. Like, I want to make him like so metro that maybe he's bisexual. And I talked to the writers about it, and they're like, well, okay, let's see what you do with it. And so, I would talk to the props department, and they'd be like, what do you want to drink? I'm like, skinny tall glasses, really fruity stuff on top, like a straw, maybe flowers.
Man, you
Always
nailed it.
got to have the man bag every time, even if it's not there, so that people start to go, what's in that bag? So it was like creating this person now became a lot of fun, and it helped me when I would go back because I wasn't working all the time. I'm doing Burn Notice 4 times a year. The rest of my life I'm hustling.
Yeah.
So to remember this guy, it was like you had to create him, that he was like in theater, where it's like, you walk away from the show and then you come back on Wednesday or Thursday and you're like, oh my God, it feels like 100 years. But once you put on your costume, you're like, okay, I know. Now I remember. Oh, the shoes, right? This is how he walks, right? So a lot of that was taking that theater background. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That artistic director background, and going, build yourself a character that you can remember. Because watching Jeffrey Donovan play Michael was like, I was like, oh, he has so many lines, right?
Mm-hmm.
That his delivery is really simple, so that he can remember who his character is. Right, exactly.
Almost comically simple. But
yeah.
But you mentioned earlier that you were kind of like a Halloween kid, that you kind of liked old school horror. Had you seen Bruce Campbell's previous work, or was that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So you knew who you were acting across from and everything.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I was really nervous the first time I sat across from him, and he noticed it, and he's like, "What's up?" I said, "No, it's just like I got a million friends who want me to get your autograph."
I bet.
He's like, "Yeah, well, you'd have to go to a Comic-Con to get one of those." No, I'm just kidding. You don't want my autograph. I'm like, no, I don't.
That's so funny.
And he laughed when I said I don't. His friends, and so he's great. We got along really, really well.
That's awesome. That's
he's
really cool.
A great guy, amazing, and really another guy who knows everything that's going on because he makes his own movies.
Yeah.
So it's like having another director producer on the set, because he knows what's going on. He can, see things before it's going to happen. I remember we were doing this one episode where it's the episode where the house blows up.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Yep.
Right. And so we're spending a lot of time together. And there's a scene when he's going to make the bacon, and he says, hey, listen, Paul, don't try to fucking do your lines too good during this. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, I'm going to be making a lot of noise. I'm going to be clanging. It's going to happen all over your lines, but you'll thank me later when you get to go do ADR work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, great. And then it kind of helped me not to get stressed out about that scene, because I thought he's right. That's what's going to be the precedent. And then I'll be in LA and they'll be like, hey, Paul, I want you to come in. And you're like, oh, sure. $400 an hour. Hell yeah. I'm going to come in and do some ADR work. So that idea of being a professional and keeping it fun, he's, I got to say, Bruce Campbell was great I learned a lot from him.
That's awesome. Yeah. It's really cool to see somebody that I knew was local, you know what I mean? Because I knew your parents and everything on this show, and not just, some outsiders coming in and thinking they knew Miami. And you nailed it with all that. Exactly what you just said was what was in my mind, and probably a lot of people's minds who were from Miami watching the show. The Miami metrosexual, and exactly how that character, it was beautiful to watch. And
Thank you.
Then, to have you as a recurring character, where it wasn't just like an episode piece, but something that, like I said, from pilot to finale, was a part of the show. It was just really fun. It was a lot of fun. I hope you had fun, playing the character. And certainly, something that people still talk about, and still recognize you from, I'm sure, at times.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate that, I may not have done a whole hell of a lot, but like the things that I have done are really high quality.
Yep.
Burn Notice, Bloodline. I mean, Bloodline is, woo, what a great show that
you're
was.
the corner, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't have as big of a recurring. I ended up doing 5 episodes.
It's still pretty cool.
But yeah, but I mean, just the quality of that show again is just a learning experience. I mean, the DP on that show, he created that whole dirty look, that style, and I just completely fell in love with it. So every time I'm working with my students and I'm directing or I'm working on a film and stuff, I'm always thinking about, let's put that in the foreground and blur it a little bit so that we get this kind of dirty look, so it has this voyeuristic kind of quality. So every time you're watching Bloodline, it's like you're the person that's hiding behind that tree or the building or the bush, and it's the camera. It's fascinating. There's been a lot of stuff that's come through Miami that, I mean, is not very. No, I mean,
No, I you can say it because everybody's thinking it.
Yeah, and I'm glad my friends got work on those shows, but I didn't watch them, and I don't think anybody else did because they came and went real fast.
No, absolutely.
So,
yeah,
it's a shame that we are in the situation that we are, because having lived in Los Angeles, people in LA and New York love to come to Miami to shoot. I mean, are you kidding? They get to stay on Miami Beach, get put up in hotels, party their asses off all night long. They love it here. And, they don't want to be in Atlanta. It's hot. It's landlocked. The traffic is just as bad, if not worse than LA and Miami.
But it's a financial thing, right? I mean, some sort of tax incentives and different things that bring them there.
Yeah, it's the tax incentives, and because.
But it makes all the shows look the same, though. When when they're all set in Georgia. I don't see. That's the thing. Like, as you and I spoke about corporate, and I know that USA Network's a major network and Burn Notice is a major show, but for what it was so different and so unique. And like you said, like Scooby-Doo meets MacGyver in the way that it was presented, it was refreshing because it wasn't like the other shows that you would scroll through. And I don't know, man. I think we need more of that, because right now what I'm seeing is a lot of reboots, a lot of remakes, a lot of sequels, a lot, people are digging into the same old bag over and over and over again.
Yep.
It's a little nauseating from a consumer standpoint.
It's terrible. No, I mean, it's true, because what's happening now, I was having this conversation with my students the other day. A lot of these shows that they're binge watching that I've watched, like Glow, for instance, really love season 1 of Glow. I got to season 2 and I was like, no, I'm done. That was a really good movie. You should have just made it a movie, or like Stranger Things. Like, I binged watch, which I can't really do because the next day I feel like I'm having a brain hemorrhage all day long, because I can't absorb that much information.
Yeah.
It overwhelms my brain. And I'm like, I can't remember it. And then I remember episodes in season 1 of Stranger Things where I was like, God, this is so boring. Let's just move it along. Like, but no, they got to drag it out. We got to get this close up. And I mean, no, you don't. Like, stop making movies into television shows and just stop.
Yep.
But they're really scared and they're really apologetic and they're really lazy and nobody goes to the movies. And, all anybody wants to see is backstory, exposition, same thing over and over. And, eventually it'll stop and somebody will come out with the next Do the Right Thing, the next Drugstore Cowboy, the next Pulp Fiction, the next, Melancholia, whatever. And we'll have that revolution again. But right now, when all of our great filmmakers of the last couple decades can't get their films to be distributed or can't get wide release or having to compromise and do, superhero films and crap, it's like, I don't want to see where's my P.T. Anderson movies? Like, I need that stuff, but they don't think that we do. They don't think we need intellectual stimulation.
Give it time, I guess. I really am kind of hoping that things do come full circle. Things tend to be cyclical. Yeah. And I'm hoping that the cycle, comes back around.
I agree. It will, because it does. You can just look at it in terms of decades. Right now, it's like we've been a decade that seems to want to repeat the worst parts of the 80s.
Yep.
And, having lived through the 80s in hair metal, eventually we got Nirvana. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's true.
And when Nirvana came, it's like wiped out all that crap. It's like all that crap left. And you either were a good enough band like, Sonic Youth and all the cool alternative bands that I was into already in the 80s, they carried over into the 90s, and all that Poison and White Snake and all that crap all flushed down the toilet.
Yeah. And we're just I'm in wait and see mode as a consumer, on the outside of it, just to kind of see what we get next. Before I wrap this, I wanted to bring up, because you did play soccer, and I know you're a big soccer fan. I wanted to hear your thoughts on Inter Miami, because I know they've had a tough start, but they are bringing a different style of soccer to the city of Miami than Miami's ever experienced before. It's different than the Fusion or anything like that. I do see a larger fan base than we've had in past years. What's your thoughts on the franchise?
Well, a lot. I have a lot because I love soccer, because I love Miami, because I love David Beckham, because I love Fort Lauderdale, because I love where they're at. First of all, I don't think this location that they want, this golf course next to the airport, is a good idea at all. First of
Gotcha.
all, it's got the most, what is it? It's the most toxic soil in all of Dade County.
Mm-hmm. And that's saying something.
Yeah. The location is a nightmare. What? You want us to drive to the airport? It's bad enough to go to the airport. Now I got to go to a match next to the airport?
Yeah, it's a nightmare to get in and out of there.
Maybe if you, give me public transportation. Oh, wait, sorry, Bremen owns that. No, we're never going to get public transportation. Well, I don't know. So to me, leaving it in Fort Lauderdale, leaving it in that stadium, and letting it grow there. And then in 10 years, if this club can stick around, because remember, the Fusion, as much as everyone forgets them, they won the Supporters Shield that year and then moved. That's how terrible of a fan base they had.
Yeah.
I think it's really a disgrace that we didn't figure out, or Beckham didn't want to buy the strikers, or no one would sell the strikers, because, the reason why a lot of these clubs in MLS, like the Seattle Sounders, Vancouver Whitecaps, these are clubs that were around in the old North American Soccer League.
Yeah.
FC Cincinnati was a USL club. These are clubs that were around. There's a fan base there. There's no fan base for Inter Miami. So I was scared. So yes, like you, I'm happy to see him. But if these people are going to get in their car and leave Westchester to drive to Fort Lauderdale on a Wednesday night, and then they get served a 5-0 match like that debacle that we watched on Wednesday, it's not going to be long before people are like, it's too hot, I don't want to go. No. And
they have those brothers that are pretty good. Whose
the
name
Higuain, they're okay. To me, they built the team. They built the team wrong. Blaise Matuidi, he's not doing anything out there except collecting a paycheck.
No, and really and truly, it's like you said, people are giving of their time, not just their money or anything, but their time, because of what it is to drive out there.
They're hungry. Listen, they're hungry, just like this country has. Soccer has boomed because it fits with millennials and young people, because A, it's affordable. B, there's no timeouts, right? So it's like their lives. They don't have to sit through a commercial. You go, it's 45 minutes, you go, you get another beer, you come back, it's another 45 minutes, you're back in the car, you're gone.
Boom. Yeah.
And so, and like I said, it's affordable. Everyone likes it. Kids play it. It's caught on. It's replacing baseball. I mean, and
now,
we're only going to get.
Who's your team though?
Oh, the Galaxy.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I mean,
that makes sense.
I went. My first match was in 2010, right after the World Cup, and Landon Donovan, who's my favorite U.S. player, was playing for them. And so
no relation to Jeffrey Donovan, right?
No. So one of my Burn Notice buddies who had moved out to LA, Melissa, we went to a match, and we're standing. You're gonna love this. We're standing in line to buy a beer, and somebody says, "What the hell is Barry the Money Launderer doing at an LA Galaxy match?" And I turn around, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm talking to you. What are you doing here?" And I'm like, I'm supporting the Galaxy. She's like, "Where are your seats?" I'm like, "Over there." She's like, No. You're coming with us. And they were supporters of the Riot Squad, which is one of the 3 supporters groups at the thing. So they brought us down into their section 138. 138, why? Because they're all Misfits fans. You know, the punk band, the Misfits?
Yeah.
Right. So they're all fans of the Misfits. So their section is 138 because of the Misfits songs, We Are 138.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, oh, this is kismet.
Yeah, that's
like
perfect for you.
My punk rock thing's coming back. The Burn Notice connection's back. And the supporters group, which is a family, boom, I was a season ticket holder. I've been to weddings, baby births. I mean, all of my friends, my closest friends in LA,
Riot Squad,
are all Riot Squad. Yes.
That's
I swear
awesome.
to God. So, I'm happy for Inter Miami. Believe me, I watch every match. I love Beckham.
They got some work to do, though.
They got this one Scottish kid that's really good. What's his name? Number 7. I can't think of his name. He's probably, to me, the most consistent player they have. And I heard that we just got Nick Raimondo.
Yeah, I heard a rumor about that. What really has been kind of in the forefront of my mind is this deal that seems like it's all about filling seats and not necessarily about team success, which is trying to bring Messi over for his kind of his sunset years. I don't know if you had seen that smoke.
I did. Yeah, he's got it in his contract where he's going to come here and play 2 years. And then
I mean, do you think that's a good idea or?
No. I think that the way that they're building the team is horrible. It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah. I mean, it's cool for people who have not seen him play to be able to come out and see him play, but that's about it. I mean, it's not necessarily good for the team's long-term success.
It's not good for the
it's a money grab.
It's a money grab. It's also tough because a lot of these guys that are coming over from Europe, they struggle because of the heat. They're not used to playing in the summer unless it's international. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then the distance, England is the size of Florida. So you're just traveling on train. Now you got to go from Miami to Montreal to Vancouver. These guys aren't used to being on a plane that long to travel to matches and then playing in that kind of heat.
No.
And at this point in their career, I mean, you could see it in Blaise Matuidi. That guy won a World Cup 3 years ago.
Yeah.
He's dogging. He's getting burnt by guys who were in the USL a year ago.
He's dying out there. It's rough to watch, but who knows? I'm gonna, like I told you with the other thing, I will always hold out hope, and but they got to prove me wrong, and it doesn't happen that often.
I'll support him, but like my friends are like, you're still always gonna be a I said, yeah, man, I'm LA till I die. I can't help it.
Oh yeah.
They brought me in. I got to meet all the players. I've had conversations with AJ De La Garza, who's like the nicest person on the planet. That's awesome. These guys, when we were in the Riot Squad, like I remember one time AJ was injured and he brought us a keg of beer. You know what I mean? Like these people, we would have potlucks every game.
There's nothing like it.
And then the bands are playing and they're all punk bands. You're like, yes.
Dude,
it's soccer culture is what it is.
That's your home because it's like all your loves combined into one. That's phenomenal, man. Hey, this has been an amazing interview. I really appreciate your time. And I'm over in Sarasota. Next time you're in the area, you definitely got to hit me up.
Oh, you're in Sarasota. Okay, bud.
Yes, sir. I appreciate it. Where can people find you on social media?
I'm on Instagram. I got 2 accounts. There's a Mad Cat and there's my personal one, Bellycat23.
Cool.
And we have a YouTube channel. It's not really that up to date right now. For Mad Cat.
If they subscribe, it will be.
But it will be. We're slowly waking up out of this COVID coma to figure out what's next.
You're not alone in that. Mad Cat Theater Company, folks, and Paul Tay, the illustrious Paul Tay. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it, and hope you have a great weekend.
You too, buddy. Take care.
Right, take care. And that'll do it for another episode of the Know It Some podcast. My thanks again to this week's guest, Paul Tay. I really enjoyed that conversation. It was a lot of fun hanging out with you, and I think that's probably my favorite interview so far on the show. Folks, time is running out for you to vote on the 2021 Podcast Awards. Final day of voting is July 31st, so please head on over to podcastawards.com and cast your vote for Know It Some in both the People's Choice and Society and Culture categories. We'd also love a ranking or review on Podchaser. That's available to everybody, whether you're an Apple or iTunes user or not. It's going to be available to you, so please head on over to Podchaser. Leave us a ranking and review there, and of course, we'll always be grateful for an Apple or iTunes ranking. And the last thing would be to follow us on social media. We are on social media, just about every platform, at Know It Some Pod. That's at Know It Some Pod. On Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, you name it, we're on there. So follow us on social media at Know It Some Pod. You could also send us an email at knowitsomepod@gmail.com. We love the feedback, and I really do appreciate all the love and support. Folks, there's going to be a new episode every Tuesday, and we will see you next week.